Hello. Um, I know the volume isn't great. I'll just mention this briefly because, to be quite honest, I've raised this point many times. I know the volume isn't great. The volume's at 100%. I'm speaking directly into the camera. Um, I'm afraid this is beyond my control right now. The reason I keep uploaded videos is for a record. So I was watching a bit of Newsnight, and there was an interview with a Conservative MP, Robert Halfon, who's just been demoted from the cabinet in Theresa May's minor reshuffle. He's been re-elected as the MP for Harlow in Essex, and I had to look twice at this interview. I was only half paying attention because I was uploading my previous video, and I thought I was listening to a trade unionist or a Labour MP. But this guy, Robert Halfon, was talking about wanting to rebrand the Conservatives as having some sort of worker in the name of the party. He also wanted to get rid of the party logo from the tree to a ladder, which is an allusion to aspiration, of course. Um, anyway, I was listening to the points he was making. He was suggesting that Theresa May mentioned about being the party of aspiration, so did David Cameron, and he wants the Conservatives to be the party for working people and so on. This guy's own background, he's a member of a trade union, and he's argued that the Conservative Party needs to stop bashing trade unions but rather work with them. Some will call him a red Tory. I don't know enough about this MP to comment in great detail about his personality or anything like that, but um, and I don't think he's going to be very influential. He's a backbencher. He no longer holds a cabinet position. But incidentally, he was also one of the MPs who apparently warned Theresa May not to underestimate Jeremy Corbyn. Um, I do want to contend a few points, regarding the Conservative Party. Well, one thing that all parties do is talk about working people this, working people that. I admit it kind of gets on my nerves because I think it polarizes unemployed people. I believe it turns I think it's divisive language. I think it turns employed against the unemployed. And I understand what the message is, that people are contributing to society and they want something back from, they want to see the benefits of a good society and a good government. I get that. But I do think that it gets down to this thing that the Tories were doing not so long ago about pushing the whole Shrivers versus, um, strivers versus shirkers narrative. Um, Nothing escapes the fact that what the Conservatives have done over 7 years is a New Labour wasn't much better. It's basically probably number one reason why I could never vote for them. I've experienced unemployment. It's a very unpleasant experience. It's frightening. It creates great stress. Far from living a life of luxury, you're living in near constant anxiety about where money's coming from. I'm not going to make a big lengthy video about the welfare system, but suffice to say, most claimants are not getting anywhere near the sort of money that the average right leaning voter thinks that they do. It just isn't the case. And I do admit that I get very angry when I hear people saying, oh, lazy door scroungers this, lazy door scroungers that. This utter lack of empathy is something that the Conservative Party really promotes because their whole position on unemployment is that unemployed people are lazy and they need to be punished. Now, they will never publicly admit that. But that is why the welfare system as it stands is set up to be as degrading and as draconian as possible. This was a system that was developed to give people a safety net. And it is good that we have this system. But under New Labour, and incidentally, it's one of the things I dislike about New Labour, and under the Conservatives, It's basically designed to be as draconian as possible, to make people feel as bad as possible, and to treat people not as individuals but as numbers, as basically no better than as if they're offenders doing community service. The side effect of this is it creates a situation where it has led to a much higher suicide rate for the unemployed than people in work, far more disproportionate. And I must admit, it makes me very, very angry that people who have never been unemployed stick their nose up at people who are and think that they know everything. They think they know everything about someone's situation, and they rush to judgments like, oh, you're lazy, or you just want free money, which is a complete misdemeanor because there is no free money in the welfare system. There is very strict obligations in place. And it is partly Tory billboards that, lead to this sort of divisive image, but it is also the nasty, toxic, poisonous, hateful, disgusting Murdoch press that misinforms people about this. And I make no apologies for using strong language there because that is what they do. They will take an extreme case, someone, for example, claiming thousands in benefit money and fathering, 10 different children by 9 different women or something. Yes, there are people out there who abuse the system. I'm not for a second denying that. And those people are a disgrace. It's unfair on the taxpayer and it gives other unemployed people a bad image. But that's just the point. They don't represent everyone. Just as you cannot say that all Muslims are Islamists, you cannot say that all young black men in London are members of gangs. You cannot say, no generalizations hold up to scrutiny in terms of saying that they're a representation of everyone. So I do feel that a lot of Conservative voters just have a total lack of empathy. I'm not going to say everyone because then I'd be guilty of what I've just said. But it is my experience that the narrative that the Conservative Party promotes, fueled by the Murdoch press, does lead a lot of people who vote for them with this mindset that, oh, the lazy unemployed are getting free money. And it makes me so angry because they just don't have any idea of what it is like to have to go in there, how soul destroying it is, and what that actually feels like. Yes, you get money from the state, but there's very strict obligations that come with it, including forced 35 hours a week job search, which works out at less than a minimum wage. So actually, you're being expected to do more work than what you're actually getting in Job Seekers Alliance. And that job search, they're very, very strict about that. I just find that most of those people who stick their nose up at the unemployed, they simply haven't experienced it. And I'm not expecting them to understand every single issue, but I would ask them to not be so quick to rush to judgment. If unemployed people are living a life of luxury and they're just getting free money and they're loving it, why is the rate of suicide so much higher? That's my challenge to conservative thinkers on this subject. If you think life is so good for unemployed people, why is the suicide rate so high? So my question to Mr. Halfon would be, well, firstly, I don't think that idea is ever going to work because conservative voters and the Conservative Party is never going to want workers in their name. It sounds communist. I mean, it's just unthinkable. Um, it's even more implausible than New Labour was, and yet New Labour happened. But I just don't think that this is plausible. So, with all due respect to Mr. Halfon, I'm not going to bash his idea because where there is progressive ideas, they need to be welcomed. But I would ask him to reflect on his party's record so far. He talks about the Conservatives being the party of aspiration. That's great. Well, I'm all for aspiration. What I am not for is running people down and making them feel that like they've no other choice but to take their own lives because of regressive, oppressive Tory workfare programs. It's just wrong. And it makes me furious, to be quite honest, because it's treating people as criminals when they have not committed a criminal offence. Um, And it's this way of saying that if you have a job, you're a good person, and if you're unemployed, you're a bad person. That is beyond crap. And unfortunately, I'm realistic. I know that is a mentality that's very, 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 very hard to get rid of. Because if you speak out against it, people think you're some sort of anarchist. Well, I'm not anti work. I just don't accept that saying that if someone has a job, they're a good person, and if someone doesn't have a job, they're a bad person. Obviously, if someone has a job, they're contributing to the economy in the sense that they're part of the workforce. But someone who's out of work might be engaged in the voluntary sector. When I've been unemployed, I've worked in the voluntary sector. That includes retail. Um, just try being in someone else's shoes before you judge. So I'll leave it there. But Robert Halfon, interesting idea. But I would honestly ask him and challenge him to reflect on his own party and their record on their treatment of the unemployed. Now, I appreciate his message isn't so much about the unemployed, it's about workers. Um, but he is talking about helping the struggling in society. It's a complete contradiction for a party to tell people that they are lazy door scroungers and then patronize them by saying, oh, but we want to help you. You can't insult people and then tell them that you want to help them. It's a contradiction.